Last week, AMD took the wraps off of CDNA 5, the next generation compute architecture designed to take the data center crown from NVIDIA. But according to my sources, and from what I could tell actually reading the CDNA 5 white paper, there's much more going on here than just a next generation architecture for compute. In fact, from what I can tell, it seems like AMD may be laying the foundation for their next generation gaming architecture as well with what they're doing to CDNA 5. Let me explain. You see, I first started to look through the CDNA 5 white paper after I received a tidbit from one of my longest running, most reliable AMD sources. This person reached out to me and said the following. From what I can gather in recent meetings, RDNA 5 is based on UDNA, but with some custom tweaks done to make it a gaming architecture, undoubtedly at the request for Sony for PlayStation 6. Meanwhile, I see no references to any RDNA 6 after RDNA 5, but I do see some references to a UDNA after RDNA 5. So, I think RDNA 5 is the last RDNA and will indeed see AMD use a unified compute plus gaming architecture across their products after that. Heck, they might even claim RDNA 5 is UDNA as well. You see, after receiving this tip, I started looking at the CDNA 5 white paper because I figured that if RDNA 5 is already going to be at least close to what UDNA is, if not literally the first or an early implementation of it, then undoubtedly CDNA 5 would probably have some evidence that AMD is moving in that direction of becoming a more RADEOn-like general purpose architecture that's used across data center and gaming. And if you look into it, yep, right there, CDNA 5 is moving to Wave 32. Now, why is this significant? Well, long story short, Wave 32 is what AMD has deemed best for handling a bunch of gaming work items in what they call wave fronts. So they've been doing that with their gaming architecture since RDNA 1. It's a narrower wave than what CDNA uses, and according to AMD, this is because it's better to have a narrower wave for reduced latency. And of course, as many people know, games get higher performance if there's less latency involved. Meanwhile, Wave 64 is less narrow than 32, but a bit girthier for heavy compute, and has been used in compute architectures like CDNA 1, 2, 3, and 4, well, until this newest iteration, apparently. I'm sorry, but I have to conclude that AMD suddenly, before they're rumored to be moving to something called UDNA, making CDNA 5 use the same Wave 32 as their gaming products, I don't think that's a coincidence. Now, don't get me wrong, from what I've read, Wave 32 is good for AI as well, and, CDNA 5 is chasing the AI hype, of course, so I don't think it's just gaming reasons that AMD is doing this, but also, from what I can discern, having CDNA be Wave 64 and RDNA previously be 32, well, and it will still be, has caused frequent headaches for developers to optimize code for ROCm on Radeon desktop cards, and apparently they often run into compiler execution mismatch issues. So yeah, merging into one architecture, which they seem to be starting to do already with CDNA 5, will make their products get better support in general. And actually, in terms of support, NVIDIA already uses 32-thread, what they call warps instead of waves as well. So AMD standardizing on Wave 32 actually makes a ton of sense for adoption in general, whether gaming or compute or AI. But that's not all. If you actually continue to dig into the CDNA 5 stuff that AMD put out this last week, it all but confirms a ton of architectural details that I've already leaked about RDNA 5, and I want to go through all of those and recap what you can therefore expect for RDNA 5 and why it might end up being called UDNA after all, after an ad from a sponsor. This piece of content is brought to you by Salad. No, not that one, this one. Salad is a computer sharing community that can help you earn back some of the money you spent on a gaming setup while it's just sitting there not gaming. Because let's be honest, no matter how much we want to game on a given weekend, you gotta admit that most of the time your expensive PC is not gaming, it's just sitting there and thus could be earning. Specifically, if you own an RTX 3060 or better graphics card, you can become a Salad power user, and with a much more powerful setup than even that, you can actually earn hundreds of dollars a month and rewards for helping the world with massive computing projects. So when you're not gaming, start up the Salad app, become a Salad chef, and cook up some cash. Your computer's hard work is rewarded with games, gift cards, gaming hardware, and other epic loot. Don't miss out on the free rewards. Remember, all you need is a 3060 or better. If you have something better, it can earn you hundreds a month. So click the link in the description to support Moore's Law is Dead for free and get started today. All right, so it's not just Wave 32. AMD just dropped a ton of CDNA 5 details that I believe confirms the validity of a few of the details that I've already leaked in some RDNA 5 leaks so far. So first of all, there was that RDNA 5 dedicated GPU leak itself that surprisingly confirmed, amongst many things actually. Go watch that video if you want to know what AMD's doing with next-gen graphics cards. But one thing that it did confirm is that instead of going with Infinity Cache, something that AMD has been using in their dedicated high-end graphics cards since RDNA 2, they're going with a large L2 cache pool that seemingly everything in their product lineup will use, whether it's their APUs, dedicated GPUs, PlayStation 6 Helix, they all seem to be dropping Infinity Cache and moving to a large pool of L2. Not as large of a pool, from what I can tell, as what NVIDIA has been doing, but still a large pool replacing Infinity Cache. I was like, I wonder if I'm missing something. Like, I wonder if the information I have is incomplete and there's actually Infinity Cache listed on some other document that I didn't have access to. Because if they achieve what I saw in that leak, it would be incredible, right? They're moving from, at least 64 megabytes with RDNA 2 over 100 megabytes of L3 to what looks like in a high-end 384-bit card, just 40 megabytes of L2, and in their mid-range cards going all the way down to things like 16 megabytes. Like, if they can really achieve the level of performance they say they want to achieve with RDNA 5, which is like doubling RDNA 4 performance or more, and they can do that with a fraction of the cache, even if it's just L2, what an accomplishment. But I didn't know, like, was I missing something? And, well, look at this interview here with Chips and Cheese. AMD just confirmed that they have elected to go with what they call a global L2 with CDNA 5. This sounds a lot like what I've seen with RDNA 5 docs. Check. This basically confirms I'm not crazy. If they're doing this for their highest end AI compute, then yeah, it seems like with RDNA 5, they just use L2. They don't need L3 anymore, which, by the way, will have a lot of benefits. Before RDNA 5, or maybe they'll call it UDNA, before this next generation product family, partners have had to choose, do they want Infinity Cache or not? Like the PS5, Xbox Series X did not use Infinity Cache to save on die space, and it seemed to work out okay, at least for the PS5. But then you had problems with like products like Strix Point with RDNA 3.5, where they didn't think it was worth it to put Infinity Cache on an APU, and it had pretty massive bandwidth issues. You don't have to go, do I want hundreds of megabytes or at least dozens for a high-end GPU? Do I not? Does an APU, is it really worth it? If they have one system unified for everything of just L2 and a reasonable amount, not a massive amount per compute unit, it just scales up and down the product stack. Everything is minimizing how much silicon you use while delivering excellent performance. And it probably simplifies driver development as well if they all operate within the same methodology of how they handle bandwidth. All right. Second of all, so I first leaked that RDNA 5 would use some form of chiplets when I confirmed XBOX Helix would use a Magnus chiplet that would share with desktop GPU. You see, what they would do for the next-gen Xbox console is add a CPU die that attaches to the GPU and memory controller die, and boom, there's your Xbox Helix. But then for a dedicated card, they'd add a much smaller, cheaper, little display out die, basically, that might have some other I/O on it, and that is what you would use to make the successor to the 9070 XT. Well, if you look at the diagrams of like the Xbox Helix, or what the APU is called as Magnus, doesn't that layout look like really similar to the MI455X? No, it's not exactly the same. And of course, the MI55X is like that on steroids. It's massive and crazy expensive. But look at it. You've got the compute units. You've got the memory controllers above and below them. And then on the side, you've got the chiplet that has I/O on it as well. That looks very similar to the layout of what RDNA 5 is doing. Again, I think we have proof right here of the groundwork being laid and confirming some of the details I've already leaked about RDNA 5. Check again. All right, and now third. So this leak on screen here, this is the one that leaked most of the RDNA 5 lineup and also confirmed that it's multi-use. The smaller dedicated graphics cards next gen actually share chiplets with APUs the same way Magnus shares a chiplet with dedicated mid-range. And then the high end presumably will be shared with a bunch of, high compute AI variants as well. Well, if you look at what AMD is announcing here with the MI400 family, there's multiple different variants targeting very different workloads with a variety of different chiplets mixed and matched here. And although they're all called the same architecture, the MI430X and 455X actually tackle very different solutions with variants on the same architecture itself. And so I think here AMD is proving that one architecture can handle very different solutions across the product stack. Check again. AMD is already demonstrating they can do what RDNA 5 will attempt to do, a very ambitious scenario where they basically have like 4 compute chiplets or something that are used across, AI, gaming, console, and laptop. Wow, they're already doing it. I think they'll be able to do it again with RDNA 5, which of course might even be called UDNA. And actually, looking at some of those old RDNA 5 dedicated GPU leaks again, I think it's no wonder why most of the proposed lineup, this surprised me a little bit when I looked at this, last year. Most of the lineup isn't even listed as being used for gaming. That's different than RDNA 4, where sure, they have professional versions of the card, but RDNA 4 was a gaming architecture through and through. If you look at this, the plurality is gaming, or is it even plurality? No, it's tied with how many AI and machine learning variants there are. And the reason is because this is a unified architecture, or a nearly unified architecture, that is going to be capable of doing everything AMD would want to do with a compute GPU, whether that's gaming, AI, or a bunch of other things. And in fact, I thought it was really interesting the top-end gaming variant that, at least as of a year ago, was planned to have a 384-bit bus disabled down from 512-bit. I thought that was odd. Like, even NVIDIA with the top 5090 gives you a 512-bit bus. Like, why even give it that? Well, it's because most of the variants won't even be for gaming. It wouldn't surprise me if AMD elected to give the top RDNA 5 / maybe UDNA chip a larger than it needed memory bus, simply because there will be some variants where they will want hundreds of gigabytes of RAM, and the larger memory bus might just be for that, not even for gamers specifically. And so there you go. Look, I'm going to be honest. I never really knew what to make of that UDNA buzz that everyone talked about for like a month straight 2 years ago. Truly, I know Jack Hune at AMD mentioned there was some UDNA initiative, and maybe people took that to quite literally mean that after RDNA 3, they would just switch to something called UDNA. But I was never so sure that's what he meant. I continued to see documents back then that listed things like RDNA 4 and RDNA 5, and none of my sources said anything to me about a UDNA coming up in meetings. I thought that maybe it was just an initiative, that Jack wasn't saying they were going to move to something called UDNA so much as saying that they were going to have a mindset where they try to share more of the work between CDNA and RDNA and make them more similar to each other over time. But seeing these similarities between what I'm reading in CDNA 5 docs compared to the RDNA 5 docs I've already leaked, and then the public information that AMD has been dropping in interviews, UDNA does seem to be a thing, and a thing that I am warned by my sources as well is really happening. So for many of you, you will go, duh, we knew UDNA was a thing, Tom, like whatever, and you can call me stupid for not being quite sure if UDNA was literally a next-gen architecture, but for me, at least, wasn't until this month that I was sure UDNA wasn't just some cost-saving or work-sharing initiative, and I can now say that I am convinced it is the start of what will basically be a fundamentally new unified architecture, like when AMD went to GCN. And speaking of GCN, it took the performance crown from NVIDIA, and it's because AMD could justify having their top-tier compute product also be really strong at gaming because, well, it was going to be sold for much more to their compute customers. And if as a byproduct, their gaming card was god tier, well, that's okay. A similar thing could happen now with UDNA. AMD will, for the first time in a while, be pulling from fundamentally more advanced and higher R&D architectures, the stuff that they are using for their insanely expensive AI products. They'll be pulling from those and putting that in gaming products as well, whether it's a dedicated GPU, laptop APU, PlayStation 6, or Xbox Helix. And because of these products, because they are all multi-use, Radeon's going to benefit. AMD's going to be able to justify going to the god tier of products, like I've already leaked with this hundreds of compute unit, up to 512-bit bus thing. That can exist as a gaming product now because AMD doesn't have to worry how many gamers will actually be able to afford this. Doesn't matter. We're going to be selling it to AI anyways, and if there's a few of them that we make that are just monsters for gaming, that's cool too. No longer will AMD have to be justifying, like, do we really need high-end RDNA 4? We probably don't. Or frankly, RDNA 3 or 2. RDNA 3 and 2 were smaller than their NVIDIA counterparts as well. If AMD knew they could use one thing for two things just as well, they might have justified going to a 384 or 512-bit bus generation sooner. But with UDNA, or maybe RDNA 5, whatever they end up calling it, now they will be able to justify it. And really, I think this could be the Zen moment for AMD GPU. This is the foundation that AMD will build on for the next decade for all of their consumer and professional products. And therefore, just like Zen, I think if you can wait one more year, maybe just wait for these graphics cards. I think they're going to be worth the wait. All right, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, you'll probably also enjoy those RDNA 5 leaks that I brought up. Please make sure that you're subscribed to the Moore's Law is Dead YouTube channel, and then search on the channel RDNA 5 leak or Xbox Magnus and AT3, AT4. Check out those leaks to get the full picture of what's going on next year with AMD's gaming graphics card products. And also check out the other things there too. There's a fun video also recently where I broke down which accounts on Twitter were bots. It was very funny. Check out that one too. And consider joining the Moore's Law is Dead Patreon. If you do, you get access to a catalog of hundreds of die shrinks. A new one just came out. You also get access to a Discord with thousands of fans there that will love to talk to you about this video. I'll be there as well. Join me. And of course, you'll get access to asking guest questions. The next guest will be Jez Corden, who I was just talking to behind the scenes. We'll be breaking down how Xbox will or won't succeed next generation with Helix and how PlayStation is acting right now, and a bunch of other stuff having to do with gaming as well. Excited to have him on. I'll have other people too, like Jimmy Champagne from PS Ready. I've got a gaming market analyst coming on soon, Dustin Furman. I've got actually quite a lot of people slated to come on. If you want to ask them questions, lowest $1 tier gets you access to that. And of course, other die shrinks as well. But for now, that is all. Thank you for watching and have a good weekend, everybody.